Hey guys, tonight we begin somewhere strange, somewhere damp. Something is pressing on your chest. Not a ghost, not exactly. Just a few inches of pine, hastily nailed and not sanded. You can smell the soil above you. The air is warm, too warm, like breath trapped in a wooden mouth. Imagine it. Summer in the year 1348, and you, lucky you, have been pronounced dead. That's right. Plague carts rolled through earlier. You were scooped up, presumed lost, and tucked away beneath the earth in a plain, carpenter's coffin. You probably wouldn't survive this moment, of course. Buried alive, lungs screaming for air. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is a bedtime story. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you watching from tonight? I want to know the hour and the place. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your fingers twitch first. They brush something scratchy. Straw, you think, shoved lazily around your shoulders. It rustles against fabric soaked in. Well, let's just say it isn't sweat. Your legs don't feel broken, which is nice. But the thumping in your head makes the dark throb in waves. It was the monks, you're fairly certain. Someone in brown robes, or gray, said a few words in a language you didn't understand. You remember being sick. You remember bells. You remember crying owls, or just people trying not to cry. Then darkness. Now this. You push. The lid groans like old teeth. One of the nails wasn't hammered in all the way. You try again, harder. The wood creaks up along one edge, squealing like a rat underfoot. Your fist breaks through, and suddenly, warm fog kisses your knuckles. Earth spills in, gritty, wet, forgiving. You inhale your first full breath in days, or hours. You're not sure. The timing of death is rarely tidy. The second push frees your right shoulder. You wriggle, duck, shove. A final gasp of breath, damp, full of leaf rot and ash, fills your lungs as you scramble out of your own grave. Gracefully, no. Quietly, still no. It is dusk. Of course, it's dusk. The fog is heavy with the coppery scent of fires and fever. It clings like thin wool to your hair, your eyes, your thoughts. You're in a graveyard, naturally, but not alone. The earth here is restless, not in a supernatural way, no, just freshly overturned. Dozens of low mounds, hastily tamped and sprouting small wooden markers carved in haste. A few barely have names, just initials, if that. One has X scratched into the wood like someone refused to remember who was beneath it. You're standing in a scene made for whispers. Something shifts 2 graves away. You freeze. No, not footsteps. Just a mound settling, perhaps. The soil sighing under its own sorrow. You feel pity oddly. And gratitude? It hadn't been your time. Or maybe it had, but no one noticed that you lived again. The coffin lies cracked behind you, half swallowed by dirt, its lid flipped up like a mouth left open mid-prayer. You trace your name on the inner rim, and then hesitate. That wasn't how your name was spelled. It's the kind of mistake a sleepy monk would make, dipping his quill in the wrong inkwell. Or a clerk who didn't know you. Or a villager who didn't care. Either way, it was enough to get you interred. Misnamed in both life and death. Charming. A breeze brushes through the graveyard, curling round the markers like fingers parting old pages. Somewhere beyond the wall, made of crumbling stone, not meant to hold anything fierce, a bell is ringing. One slow knell, then silence. Not a call to service, more of a final note. You step forward. Your legs remember how. Sort of. Something aches in one ankle, but you hobble onward through the mist. Your shift, once white, is sack-colored now and clings with a kind of damp dignity. There's a church somewhere behind the mist, you think. Churches were always near graveyards in these places. Easier that way. Saves the living a journey when death comes home hungry. You move on instinct. Not toward the bell, but away from the open pit. You know the one. You passed it on your way up here. A larger ditch, wide, yawning like a wound, where 5, 6, maybe a dozen bodies waited. One cart sat half-tipped beside it when you were hauled through earlier. You weren't conscious then, but your nose had remembered. And no, you will not go back that way. Instead, you find another path. A narrow one, lined with short stone walls blackened by age and smoke. It leads toward a shed, or hut, or perhaps just a collapsed granary. But something flickers inside it. Lantern light. It could be salvation or a way to see yourself for the first time. You pause at the doorway. It's ajar, and something swings gently against its inner boards, a leather satchel dangling from a bent nail. It's stamped with a cross, but the soft kind, not the kind carved to ward off demons, more the kind stitched into poultices and prayer cloths. The figure inside is hunched, hooded, holding tongs. Something steams in a basin near their elbow, a mix of herbs and diluted wine. They haven't seen you yet. Then you breathe just a bit too loud. They turn, slow, patient, like they've been expecting something all along. There are no masks, no bird-like beaks or silly straw hats, just raw skin flushed red at the cheeks. A kind of calm etched into the features. Not joy, not fear, just routine. Which pit were you from? The person asks gently, as if asking where you might have gone gathering mushrooms this morning. You don't speak. Can't really. They nod. One of them miscounts. They turn back to the basin. Mistakes were made. You're not the first. And just like that, you aren't a corpse anymore. You're a clerical inconvenience. But that's a sort of life, isn't it? Outside, the bell tolls again. A single note, slower this time. Almost bored. Rest here. The figure offers, gesturing toward a bench cushion barely a foot thick. You have fog in your eyes still. You'll want mint balm for the lungs. You sit, slowly, hands on your knees, not quite shivering. There are papers here, too. Names scratched onto thin bark, not parchment. More forgiving, less likely to burn the skin when mishandled. Probably collected from the town's parish book, then transferred here in haste. You're not surprised to see your name again. Only this time, there's an asterisk beside it. Corrected by someone, dismissed by another, and crossed out by the third. Behind you, something shifts, not outside, but in your chest. The rhythm of your breath steadies. The grave dirt on your skin becomes an afterthought, something temporary, like soot at Candlemas. The hooded figure leaves a small cup by your side. Something warm, herby, sweetened with maybe lavender, or just the memory of it. You sip. The fog wraps tighter around the hut like a blanket drawn up to the chin. You were buried once today. You're allowed to rest now. In this odd twilight, this strange pause between death and survival. Tomorrow, perhaps, they'll wonder where you've gone. Or not. Maybe they buried the wrong person, or maybe no one ever bothered to get it right. Hard to say. Medieval documentation wasn't exactly meticulous, and the plague wasn't taking notes. But that cup is warming your chest. The grave is behind you, and the lids of your eyes are heavier than the coffin ever was. Sleep for now. Just a little. The monks will still be mumbling come dawn. You wake at the edge of dream and memory, curled on the wool-stuffed cushion like a cat that never meant to sleep that long. The hut is quiet now. Not silent. No. Somewhere outside, a crow is cawing loud enough to disturb even the kindly dead. But warm. The hearth, if you can call it that, is little more than a clay pit with coals glowing just enough to pretend there's still fire. It's been kept for your sake, clearly, though you don't know why. Your neck aches with a tilt that means sleep came fast and badly. A low groan tumbles out of your throat as you lift your head, and the fog that used to press against the windows now seems to have crept inside. Not a visual fog, the kind that clouds only thought. What was the hooded figure's name? Did they give one? You don't recall. You remember the herbs, the steam, the bitter mint long since gone cold in the cup by your side. But not who gave it. The bench has left a line across the back of your leg. A woven imprint of survival. You step outside slowly, blinking. The ground is slick, made more mud than soil by the graveyard's hurried intrusions. The churn of so many bodies packed into too little earth has left it uneven, soft. You feel a squish beneath one foot and quickly decide not to wonder what it was. On a small stone positioned just right of the doorway rests a length of cloth. Your cloth, maybe. Wrapped in it is a bit of dried bread, a pinch of salt, and a single sprig of rosemary. Not left like charity. Laid, rather. A quiet gesture. The sort of provisioning given to someone likely to keep wandering. You pick up the bundle without guilt. You've had enough death for one dusk. Down the slope, the fog thickens. Grave markers give way to thistle and thin fences. The hill descends into where the living live, or used to. You pass a gate not so much hung as leaned into place by two rusted hinges, and it groans when brushed aside. It's strange, but the fog seems to know where not to go. It collects just high enough that certain details peek through. A sloped thatch roof here, a half-buried cartwheel there. It's like waking up inside a painting where the artist got bored halfway through shading the sky. The town is still. Not dead. Not fully. But resting. A curtain sways behind an upper window, as though someone just let go. A dog barks once, hollow and disinterested. Far ahead, you glimpse a man walking briskly down a narrow lane. Wide Oxford hat. Robes like a friar's. But he does not look back. Maybe he can't. Maybe no one looks at the returning. You follow anyway. The roads are mostly clean, though not swept. Ash and straw were laid down here recently. Absorbent, gritty, and still wet. You recognize that smell now. The biting sting of vinegar doused over everything as if it might soak up the very sickness. And maybe it did, for a while. There's a saying you half heard once. The Lord's broom sweeps wide in plague years. If that's true, then he's done a thorough job here. A few doors are marked with braided branches, bundles of bay or you woven into loops and tied with string. You're meant to avoid those homes. They've already hosted the plague. Or still do. On a small bridge arching over a filthy stream, you spot a bucket wedged against the railing, a rope coiled beside it. The water flows green-gray beneath it. You wouldn't drink from it if thirst were clawing at your throat, though someone has, judging by the empty cloth bottle nearby, chewed quite thoroughly around the rim. You unroll the cloth bundle and eat the bread, glancing left and right like a thief. It's hard, but it softens enough with the rosemary rubbed into it. The oils taste like something remembered from a fever dream, the kind that live in childhood or just beyond the body. A shadow crosses your path. You step out of it, only to realize it's yours. The bell tower is nearer here, though the sound feels further away. You look up. Atop a twisted mass of wooden braces and chiseled stone ladders, the bell sways slightly, pulled gently by the breeze, not by human hands. At its base is a squat stone building, the chapel you'd been too delirious to enter before. A small white wood sign dangles from rusted hooks near the lintel, hand-painted, "Do not knock." All heard, none spoken. You go around it instead, toward the back, where gravekeepers and attendants would have worked. And that's when you find them. 3 men, each clothed in layers of sackcloth and hemmed wool, loading what looks like laundry into a cart. But it isn't laundry. You know this. Some are already wrapped in linen. Others lie not yet shrouded, simply waiting. One of the men wipes his brow with a cloth mottled from use and turns. His eyes fix on you with a squint. Calculation, not recognition. "You're up, then," he says simply, not surprised. You hesitate. Nod. He leans back on his heels. "Didn't think you'd stir." The monks were wagering silver on it. You blink, and he waves a hand. "Don't look so startled. Happens now and then. The Marie fever mimics death so well." Limbs still. Chest light. Eyes cloud over. A day later, he shrugs. Someone coughs up a lung and climbs out their box. He gestures to the cart. Course, not all that lucky. But you well. You've got a pulse. You're about to ask your name. Not for him, but for yourself. When he mutters, "Think you're listed as Elric." Or maybe Elric's cousin. One of those sorts. Some family sent word, but the priest was coughing too hard to read it. Might be you were delivered. Might be you weren't. He scratches behind his ear absently. You don't remember an Elric, but the name fits in your thoughts somewhere. There's an old superstition, whispered among peasants, that if you say a name too often during plague season, it becomes a curse. Best to forget the names. Keeps the sickness from getting too familiar. The cartman tips his head toward the far lane. Try the coppersmith shop. If you came from town, someone there might have known you. If not, well, his gaze returns to the covered forms. Best not to linger around the workers. You thank him, or at least attempt to. Your voice barely comes. He gives you a scuffed nod and waves you off like smoke he's tired of breathing in. The town hush continues. But with movement, there's texture. A child's toy, a wheel on a stick, rests beside a rain barrel. Cracked. Forgotten. Smells of boiled cabbage leak from a shuttered window. It's all still here. Faded, but not vanished. At the square's edge stands a posting board. Rotted parchment clings to twisted nails. One flaps in the wind, a notice of burial lists amended. Fresh blotches of ink, heavy on the parchment, still glisten beneath the cloud light. Names strike through other names. Some have been written twice, a few in different hands. One in particular draws your notice. Written just yesterday in deep blackberry ink. Elric, presumed. Presumed. Not confirmed. Not declared. Just assumed. And beneath it, someone's added in haste. Correction disputed. Not even the town is sure whether you died. You almost laugh, but something tighter than amusement coils in your stomach. This, according to some chroniclers, actually happened more than you'd think. In years when plague took swift turns. Overnight deaths, sudden recoveries. Those too sick to protest ended up buried anyway. Or nearly so. And the busier the death clerks got, the more errors fell through. One friar in Lincoln reportedly filed the same woman's name 3 separate times. Depending who you ask, she died once, twice, or not at all. But there's something comforting in it. In the idea that paperwork didn't save anyone. Even death was bureaucratic by mistake. You sit beneath the board, eyes tracing that fragile word again. Presumed. It floats in your mind like the fog rolled down from the stones. If life right now hasn't been returned to you, perhaps you're simply borrowing it, just to see how the next day starts. Some distance off, behind a row of houses warped with rain, a sound begins to rise. Low and filled with rhythm, like boots on cobbles or hands slapping slabs of marble. You stand up slowly. The grave work isn't finished, but you're not staying to see who else they presume dead tonight. You don't quite walk so much as drift now, barely brushing the cobblestones with your steps. There's a strange lightness in your limbs, like you haven't been fully tethered back to life just yet. The town continues around you in a hush so deliberate, it feels rehearsed. Doors remain closed even when footsteps echo just beyond them. Curtains twitch and settle. No one makes eye contact anymore, not even your shadow. Down a narrower lane, one that snakes beside the town wall like a forgotten route, the graveyard gives way to fields now overgrown, fenced in crookedly with spare timber, and much too near the burial grounds for anyone to trust the food grown there. Some stalks of sorrel wobble in a wind that doesn't reach your skin. Your fingers trail a line along the wall's stone. Cool, damp, crumbling. Some of these sections were raised more than 100 years ago, long before plague carts and vinegar washings. A patchwork of eras built by hands since buried under them. You feel safer here, oddly, surrounded by old things. Like they've decided not to betray you a second time. You step carefully, not due to traps, but to avoid disrespect. Here, the earth is lumpy, marked by simple wooden stakes pounded into the soil. You recognize the stances, the shapes, the items laid with them. A bent spoon, a candle stub, a loop of tangled hair ribbon. These weren't placed by priests. These were offerings left by people who still believed in luck. Not faith, just superstition, quiet and personal. And that's when you hear it. Movement. Not fast. Not urgent. just present. A soft shifting of fabrics, the slap-shuffle sound of hands brushing soil from robes. You freeze behind an upturned cart half buried in ivy, breathing shallow, ears straining. A cloaked figure stoops over one of the newer mounds, pressing palm to barely settled soil. A final farewell, maybe, or a confirmation. They whisper something you can't hear, then lean back and sit fully onto the mound like they've done it 100 times. You could leave them to their grief, but something nags, like déjà vu crossed with a promise. You recognize the curvature of the back, the folds in the hood, the scuffed sandals muddy only at the toes. Not enough for digging. That's when it clicks. They were there. Not when you awoke underground, but before the box. You remember sudden brightness, heat on fevered skin, in them. This figure, holding a candle upward beside your face, maybe to check for breath, maybe not. You step forward now, but carefully. They mutter as you approach, without turning. Still twitching. Your jaw tightens, but anything you could say, accusations or gratitude, catches in your throat. I had my doubts, they say simply. The body was warm. Not warm enough to belong to the living, but not cold either. You ask, your voice hoarse, then why bury me? They make a small shrug that seems to echo louder than the wind rustling the graves. There were more arrivals than prayers to give them. We ran out of oil for the lamps. Out of time. People don't realize. The lace on the altar cloth was unraveling. Every thread matters in a chapel that sees more dead than Sunday bread. You wait. When they finally look at you, their eyes aren't unkind. Just tired. Deeply, deeply tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. Too many decisions had to be made that week. They say, I made yours. They look back to the mound they're sitting on. You were still enough. That's all it takes. The odd thing is, you're not angry. Or not entirely. The knowledge has a grave weight to it, but not a bitter one. Like ashes swept into a keepsake jar. You sit beside them. The mound is still soft, and the smell of crushed time lingers around its edges. Probably from the body itself, laid down with sprigs tied at the toes to keep away the odor. A common practice, if you weren't clergy or rich. And anyway, both of those died, too. There used to be a method. They continue, mostly to the earth beneath them. A pattern. The priest chants, boys swing the lamps, a woman sings. Then we started skipping stanzas. Then we buried without the chant. Then without names. They glance sideways at you. You were lucky to get a coffin. It would be laughable if it weren't true. Only a small portion of the dead during the height of plague years earned one. Wood was expensive, nails more so. Most were layered in plague pits like slices in a loaf. Straw sometimes buffered them, mostly not. And something in you remembers that, not learned, remembered, that it wasn't meant to be a kindness. Coffins were practical, easier to stack, neater, even when the situation was anything but. So what now? You ask, though you don't really want an answer. They reach beneath their cloak and produce something small, a folded parchment, tied with fraying twine. I kept your record, they say, offering it. Your hands tremble slightly as you accept it. On it, your name is marked in brown ink. Again, not quite your name, but similar. Your script, not theirs, if you're honest. And below it, the words, buried, reconsidered. You hold back a smile. Just barely. Reconsidered. As if death were a contract you could renegotiate, given proper paperwork. We'll need to revise the lists again, the figure says quietly. Another miracle file to dust off. You ask, are these common? The figure looks at you for a long while, their mouth curling in a slow, lopsided grin. More than the monks admit. Less than the gravediggers claim. You're not sure which is worse. A bell chimes again, softer now. Not in the tower this time. It comes from near the chapel. A handbell, rung deliberately and slow. That one's for tonight's burials. The figure murmurs, standing carefully. 3 names. 1 unbaptized. 1 marked for charring. 1. They tap your shoulder gently. Freed up by your vacancy. The statement lodges in your chest. You rose, and someone else was laid down in your place. That's efficiency in a way. They walk off toward the eastern slope, where coffins sit waiting to be wheeled downhill. Silhouetted shadows wrapped in linen, one of them perhaps still warm. You do not follow. Instead, you stay a while longer. Watch the mist settle over the heads of crosses and broken stones. Hear the crunch of wheels as the cart is rolled forward. Realize how life continues even in a place where the dead outnumber the living by thousands. Historians often debate how many truly perished in just a single European village at plague peak. Estimates vary from a third to nearly 60% of the population. Doesn't matter, really. If you ask the people pulling carts or sewing shrouds, every loss was excess. Here, shuffling among the grass and stone and chest-high fog, the lower numbers never feel like mercy. They feel like forgetting. You don't remember when you began walking again. It happens between footsteps, like blinking, one moment seated, the next back among the winding paths beyond the chapel, past the linen shed, and toward the edge of the cemetery grounds where an old willow dips its lower branches modestly to the soil. Underneath it, someone hums. You hesitate, then approach, slow enough not to startle, peeking around the broad ripple of the trunk. A girl, maybe 13, maybe smaller than she looks. She's tending a line of dolls set evenly on the dirt, little wicker things, some of fabric, one made just of corn husk. She lines them up in rows and begins covering each with a palmful of soil. No shroud, no prayer, just mimicry. You crouch beside her. She glances at you but doesn't react. You're not the strangest thing she's seen today. They're getting buried before they turn bad, she says, patting one doll gently down. Papa says you have to catch it before the stink happens. You nod. She hands you a doll. It's missing one eye. The felt mouth still smiles. You set it down next to hers, and together, in soft tandem, you tuck it in. The mist welcomes you again. The willow lets you pass like it's keeping secrets. Its hanging limbs stroke your shoulders on the way out, pale strands catching your skin like old thread snagging on bone. Behind you, the little girl still sings to her dolls, a wordless hum that clings to the fog and chases your footsteps down the slope. The chapel emerges more fully now, no longer obscured by mist but swelled up like a ridge in the land. Its stones seem older than the hill itself, compact and weather-worn from centuries of grief and incense. You walk past a narrow window carved into the wall like a wound held open, and through it you glimpse candlelight. Dozens of flames fluttering out of rhythm. Not chaotic, just tired. You follow the outer wall toward the entrance. The door hangs partially ajar. No one greets you this time. The monks are elsewhere, or perhaps only imagined. Instead, the inside exhales warmth, the slam of wax and sandalwood like a blanket thrown over your shoulders. You step inside. It's darker than you expect. The windows are slotted and narrow, and the flames don't climb very high. Still, the nave glows from soft sconces wedged into the mortar. Someone replaced the rushes recently. The floor smells faintly of rosemary again and crushed lavender. A lovely effort, if slightly unconvincing. Only 2 rows of pews remain. The others have been pushed back or disassembled as makeshift barriers elsewhere, likely borrowed for plague efforts, turned into rails, carts, or bonfires. And there, seated near the altar, back turned toward the space like they own it, or have given up owning anything, is a monk, one of the cloth-robed ones. Their head is bowed. You can't say whether it's in prayer or just sleep. You step closer, more curious than cautious. A strange sense follows you, the kind you only feel when a place is too heavy to echo your own presence. The chapel is dense with unspoken history. Martyrs, marriages, misread gospels, and now, confusion. Just before you reach the figure, they stir. Slowly, as if waking not from rest, but from remembering something they'd hoped to forget. Back again, they ask. The voice is dry but smooth, not unkind. You start to protest that you've never been here before, but then again, haven't you? They turn, gently. Their face is older than the fog outside. A fringe of hair clings carefully to the sides of their scalp, thin as parchment. But it's not their face that stills you. It's the way their eyes lock onto yours without blinking for too long a time. Not scrutinizing, just recognizing something they shouldn't. You're the one they debated keeping. They say softly, patting the end of the pew beside them. The monks, the tally men, the soul counters. You sit, foolishly obedient to the moment. A pause twists its way between words. They counted you among the gone. The monk continues. Some protested. Others argued against delay. Your skin was cool. Jaw slack. Limp. Typical signs. Or so they thought. You mutter, but not gone. No, the monk says. Only mislaid. There's something in their tone, like they've said this more than once. You glance toward the altar. It's simple, unadorned. Candles burn near to the base with wax pooled like snowfall. A cloth hangs askew. It would bother a more meticulous priest. What would have happened, you ask quietly, if I stayed buried? The monk doesn't answer for a long while. Then, nothing. They turn to look at you again. This time, kindly. Nothing would have changed. The prayer would still have been shouted. The record still scratched. Another name sewn into the funeral linens. You shift, and the weight in your chest feels less like lungs and more like stone. The monk continues. That's the truth of it. There are too many names. Too many partings. The soul no longer stops the town. A long silence follows, like frost after a thaw. Then a sound, not word, not music, trickles in from outside the vestibule. Soft murmurs. Multiple voices, all overlapping, like monks in procession. You hear words in them, but not in any real shape. Latin likely, or what's left of it in desperate tongues. You and the monks say nothing. Eventually, the sound recedes, like water drawn slowly back into its grave. The monk gathers their robe and rises. There's something you ought to see, they say. You follow without question. They lead you quietly through a side hatch behind the altar, a corridor thin as a chimney shaft, lit by knots of smoking oilstone wedged into hollows. The air here tastes like salt and soot. You descend a handful of steps, then push through one last wooden door, warped with age. You enter a room not meant to be seen. Rows upon rows of small scrolls fill the walls here. Some lie open in trays. One sits soaking in a bowl of pale vinegar, the ink running like blood on snow. A cold wind stirs here, though no holes appear in the roof. Perhaps it's just the knowing. These are the death corrections, the monk explains. Names scratched too soon. Or not at all. One scroll per soul, if we're diligent. Fewer if we're not. You pick up the nearest. The ribbon is thin. The script careful. A date is listed across the top, and beneath it, a different name has been inked in later. Dried brown, jagged. You turn it over. Someone has written again. A third edit. Why keep them if it all moves on anyway, you ask. The monk exhales, something between a breath and a cough. Because someone ought to remember what the math never could. That feels right. Not righteous, just correct in a quiet way. You set the scroll down gently beside the others and look toward the shelves. There's space for more. The monk doesn't wait. They disappear back into the corridor, robes whispering against soot-washed stone. You stay a moment longer, tracing the scrolls with your eyes. Some names are rare. Some have no names. Just markings. Tallies. One simply reads, "Boy in yellow. Coughed once. Stayed quiet after." And you realize, maybe you were never miscounted. Maybe the ones buried too soon were simply quiet at the wrong time. You leave the chamber slowly. Back outside, the air has dimmed to full mist again. Fog that glows with flame-colored edges, carrying the copper tint of evening sun lost to cloud. You pause beneath the chapel's roof edge, staring out over the graves, the fields beyond them, and the hills beyond those. It seems the world is shrinking into pale outlines. Footsteps approach, not the monks. Rougher, less reverent. You turn to see 3 figures moving along the pathway toward the chapel. Men, laborers, likely, One wears a red sash that marks affiliation with one of the local dead counts, usually assigned by the parish to assist in plague documentation. Their boots are soaked with mud, but their expressions are easy, laughing even. As they pass by, one cocks his head your way. "You the twitcher?" he asks with a grin, recognizing your borrowed clothes. You don't answer. "Should have stayed down," he jokes, nudging the man beside him. Some fools go digging their way back into the muck. World don't have food for the living, much less the second chancers. More laughter. They move on, disappearing into the chapel, raucousness quieted only by the hush that lives in sacred places, even ones drowning in paperwork. And still you stand there. Low fog curls around your knees. The bells are silent now. The tower looms, but doesn't judge. Far in the field below, you spot a wheel cart glinting in the dying light, probably tonight's collection in progress. This is a time of confusion, yes, but not chaos. You understand that now. Everyone here is simply doing what they can, mistaking the barely dead from the mostly gone, labeling the living as lost, and doing their best to tidy up grief with scrolls and bitumen and brushes of salt. Still, a few things haunt the gaps. Historians believe some clerics used to gently prick fingers before burial, a check for blood movement, a foolproof test, if rushed. Some say it was superstition more than medicine. Some say it saved lives. But others claim the gesture was symbolic only, a ritual to ease their own minds, not to revive the failing. Whether you'd been pricked or not, you can't recall. But you are here, and the chapel has not asked you to stay. So you won't. The chapel fades behind you like a dream slipped through trembling fingers. It doesn't vanish. No holy place ever leaves entirely, but it loses its weight as the land opens up and you're walking again. Past the crooked fencing, past the willow's gentle nods, past the toys staring blankly from the base of the tree. You don't look back this time. The road that winds away from the graveyard isn't really a road. Not anymore. More of a track, rutted with wheel prints softened by so many feet dragging toward death, then away in silence. But now the track is quiet. No carts. No clatter of tools. No monks pressing linen over mouths. Just you. It doesn't take long before the shape of the town collects again in the distance, almost as if rising from the fog like a fortress without ambition. Low-thatched rooftops lean over narrow lanes. Smoke floats low and slow from chimneys built more for modest warmth than pride. The fields on the outskirts are half-harvested, some abandoned. Cabbage and onions left to wither. The livestock pens are ghosted. Not emptied, just stilled. One goat chews the corner of a fence post and pauses to watch you pass, as if it knows something and chooses not to tell you. Further in, the homes become tighter clustered, sharing walls, sharing breath. One home's smoke jack leaks into the next. The town is not decrepit. It's just muffled, like the gasp before a sob. You pass a baker's stall left open, the bread curled and crusted into rock. No hands to buy it. No hands to bake anew. A fly buzzes against the honey dish, lazily pirouetting in a golden grave of its own making. Life is still here, but thin, stretched like a frayed cord, just tight enough to hum beneath the silence. At the well's edge sits a woman. Not old, not young. Bare ankles smudged, hands clasped around a wooden ladle like a prayer stick. She holds it out slightly as you pass. You nod gratefully and drink. The water is cold, surprisingly so. It runs over your tongue like it's been waiting there just for you. Not exactly clean, but it tastes alive. "You came back," she says softly. You glance at her. She doesn't flinch, doesn't even smile, just observes you like someone who's made peace with noticing. "I saw them carry you 3 nights ago. Thought it was a mistake." You didn't cough. People notice more than we think. A long pause passes between you, coated in the rhythm of the ladle dipping, then rising, then dipping again. She sets it down and wipes her palms on the hem of her apron, already gray with soot and flour. "They've buried boys twice in this town," she says. "One last month, another just last week. Both wandered back. You raise a brow. One found his way home and was shackled until a friar came clearing any curses off him. The other found himself on his own grave. Didn't speak for 3 days. Didn't eat for 5. They say he sings now, but only to stones. You ask which fate is his, and her gaze darts toward the hill. Too many stones to tell. A strange, soft ache settles behind your ribs. Not sadness, just a belonging you didn't ask for. Like you've inherited a secret from a place that speaks in smoke. Then a bell rings again, but not from the chapel this time. This one is smaller, sharper, rung from somewhere down a side alley beside the tannery with its leather draped like flayed skin. You follow the sound. It leads you toward the church square. Not the chapel, the town's other house of worship, or what's left of it. You remember it now, at least a little. Larger, less sacred, somehow. It had been used for market meetings, wool counts, cloth auctions. And on days too filled with mourning, the nave itself became a resting place packed with bodies in linen wraps, laid parallel on rush mats, stacked in solemn logic beneath stone arches meant more for echo than comfort. The bell haunts down the square's spine, hollow and thin. You reach the courtyard. It's empty, and yet you don't feel alone. At the square's southern edge, a line of wagons waits. Smaller than plague carts, but still marked. 3 red strokes painted down each side. Not stylized, just quick brushwork to say, death came through here, and it might roll by again. The bell hangs above a doorway in a crooked timber building with peeling blue trim. It was once a schoolhouse, triangle slates abandoned at its threshold. On the post beside the door, a sheet of parchment curls under twine. You stop to read it. It's another death registry. The ink is fresh, but blown slightly by breeze. You scan the names without meaning to memorize them. Tamsin, Godfrey. Willow, someone simply called Mill Boy. And then further down, a name very nearly yours. Your original, spelled correctly. Struck through. Then beneath it, someone has tried to write something else. Smaller script, different hand, violet ink. Returned. Seen in East Town, unsure. And then, beside it, possibly the same hand. Does not remember his way. It's the first time you realize someone might be watching your wandering. Or had been. Until now. Until the registry didn't know where to file you. Behind the door, footsteps approach. Light, feminine. A creak. Then the wood parts carefully, like it's learned to expect ghosts and prefers to be polite about it. A figure steps out in a long robe stained with woad and soot. Not a noble robe, nothing like that. A work robe, worn by town scribes and debt collectors too poor for leather. The woman beneath its hood squints up at you, then sighs with what honestly sounds like relief. Didn't think you'd make your way here, she says, the way someone might say you've remembered to return a library book. You blink. We saw movement near the chapel, she continues. Figured it was a rat, or worse. Didn't want to assume. You ask her why she has your name. She shrugs. It was given. Copied down twice by a tired boy. Mislabeled you first time. Wrote Edward instead. You say nothing. There's more than one dead with your name, she adds. Probably more than one living, too. The lists no longer remember which is which. They just change the ink. This square, this schoolhouse, this little town trying desperately to wrap its grief in saffron and salt. It still functions, somehow. The bell rings. The scribes write. The children, if they're somewhere, have made dolls of mud and stick to bury in sacred mimicry. And here you are, floating somewhere between names on a list. You want it removed? The woman asks absently, already reaching for her ink pot. You pause. She taps the edge of her quill against her thumbnail. You can see smudges stained all along every joint. This woman's written death more often than she's written joy. There's something calming in that. Consistent, even. You nod. She opens the ledger, flips past several marked leaves, finds the correct folio. Then, delicately, she crosses out the notation beside your name with a thin gray line. Not enough to fade it, just enough to say not now. Done, she says. For what it's worth. It's worth more than you expected. You thank her. Don't thank me, she mutters softly. You just weren't ready yet. That phrase lands heavier than anything else and stays, even as you wander back into the street. The light is fading again. Dusk has brushed against the town a second time since you clawed your way breathing out into it. Windows are shuttered but still glow faintly with hope or oil. Candles burn in halos behind old glass. The street is lined now with more silence, but thicker this time. Not dread, resignation. Far ahead of you, a group of figures wave silently. Not at you, just waving, as part of a ritual you aren't invited to understand. Their shadows flicker against the paving stones as they vanish into the alley, carrying torches dipped in murred pitch. You walk the other way, into the no light, into the part of town that forgot you, or prefers not to remember its mistakes. You pass a door with a cross scrawled in charcoal. A knot of garlic hangs beside it. Inside, someone coughs twice. You keep moving. The lanterns above the narrow lane sway like forgotten thoughts, their light barely illuminating the crooked beams and slatted windows stretching overhead. You step carefully, not because the stones are loose, though they are, but because something about the stillness feels borrowed. Like you're walking through a memory not meant for you, yet one that yawns open anyway, familiar in the way a story half-remembered still lingers at the edge of sleep. Something beckons you, not a voice, but a sound that hangs in the air. A rhythm, faint, intentional. Ding, pause, ding. You're not following it so much as it's pulling you the way tide tugs barnacles. You round a corner, footsteps softer now, breath clouding the air in small puffs that vanish too quickly. The church bell again, but not the large tower bell from before. This note is higher, thinner, struck with less gravity. A handbell. You've heard one already, haven't you? Earlier, near the carts. But now you begin to realize these bells are designated. Not all ring for the same dead. Not all ring for souls. You find the ringer beneath an arch of weather-blackened stone, standing alone beside a well with iron rust running down its lip. He wears no robe, no clerical garb, just a thick wool coat patched too many times and a belt lined with tiny pouches, like a trader's, but he's no merchant. He watches you with something between suspicion and resignation, eyes squinting beneath thick eyebrows like chimney soot. You're the grave walker, he says flatly. Not a question. Another cowardly finger of wind sneaks down your collar. You nod. And yet, he says, lips curling, breathing. He taps the bell with a slender piece of wood, and again the note echoes. Not loud, just enough to remind something, or someone. That time hasn't completely collapsed. You ask why he's ringing it. Calling the air, he mutters. Announcing the hour to the dead. Same as the monks used to do, before they all took sick or ran to cloisters far from people and their messes. Now it's just me. His tone isn't bitter. It's mechanical, like his soul gave up opinion long ago. You glance at the pouches on his belt. He follows your gaze. Without ceremony, he opens one. Dried petals. Compacted, crumbling. Lavender mostly. Some rosemary. A sliver of wormwood. For air, he explains. For choking smells. And for ghosts. He's joking. Except he isn't. You ask if it works. No, he says. But it lets people believe the air's been warned. You stand beside him and peer down into the well. Blackness stares back. I think you died once already, he says plainly. You answer before you think. I think so too. Still rattled. He continues, lifting the bell again, but hesitating before the strike. You've got the look of someone the earth tried to keep. And then he rings once more, softer this time, like for you. There's an old saying, tucked deep in village lore and whispered once at funerals where no priest attended, that if the bell rings a seventh time for the same body, the grave unlearns the memory of it, unburies it, in spirit if not in flesh. A mercy for the misnamed, a quiet invitation back into life. The bell's clapper slows, stills. You ask again, what hour is this? He shrugs. Doesn't matter. The hour wasn't for you, anyway. He tucks the bell away into a pouch and nods toward a small path just beyond the well, partially hidden by tethered goats and a collapsed cart. Go that way, he says, toward the woman with the cats. You raise your brow. She's got eyes in 20 places. People come to her when their sleep won't let them forget the dead, or when they can't shake the fever dreams. And just like that, he turns, wanders off, melds with the mist as though he was shaped from it to begin with. You breathe in, and the air tastes faintly of burnt sage and brick. The path is barely that, a staggered line of stone slabs, half sunk and stitched with moss. It curves inward like a secret being whispered to the town. The buildings here are fewer, rounder, not houses made for pride, but huts made for time. You sidestep a mule tethered under an awning and hear a sudden cough behind a thin wall. No door, just fabric drawn shut, heavy with mildew. You find her where the bell ringer said she'd be. The woman doesn't wait for you to knock. She opens the door before you reach it, head poking out beneath a twist of orange fabric. Come in, then, she mutters, and shut it behind you. The mist bothering my smallest one. You duck into a space crowded with dried herbs, rope nets, iron pots, and indeed, cats. 3 sit perched in the rafters, 2 curl on the windowsill, and another limps forward with its tail shaped like a hook. The room is warm, over-scented. A fire smolders in a corner hearth where something, bones, maybe, are being boiled. But it's fragrant, not awful, just unfamiliar. She gestures toward a stool, unbothered by your hesitation. Lost your name? She asks without prelude. You say, it's scratched out. She doesn't look up as she begins pouring something steeped in plums and cloves into a wide-mouthed cup. Then you didn't lose it. Someone traded it. You swallow slowly. Traded it. She nods. The cat on her shoulder stirs, tail swishing over her cheek. Half the town wrote different names for the same boy last week. First, a Mathis, then a pale girl, then a butcher's apprentice who disappeared from the salt barrel and reappeared in a dream someone had downriver. We're all just stuttering our memories aloud now. She shrugs. Sometimes the sickness takes the names before it takes the body. She hands you the drink. It's hot, hotter than expected, and sharp with cinnamon under oily sweetness. You need a name, she says gently. Like it or not, people without them always end up underfoot. You sip. It slips down too easily, and your limbs relax just a little. She gestures again, this time to a board near the hearth, where names are scratched in charcoal. Some have excess beside them, others stars. A few are underlined twice. These were all dead once, she says. Or said to be. Came back wrong. Some stayed. Some left. One turned into a chimney sweep near the abbey. Never spoke again. Just clean soot while muttering numbers. You eye the board. No one on it shares your name. No version of it. You ask what the stars mean. She replies, they don't know they came back. Not really. Shuffled in, found old shoes, never asked questions. And the excess. They asked too many, she answers. You don't write your name. But the fire beside you sputters like it knows it. She offers a small satchel as you stand to leave. Inside, another doll, soft cloth this time, and 3 cloves wrapped in a petal of rose. She tells you to keep it tied near your ankle until the next full moon, or whenever the crying stops. You blink. In this world, there's no line between herbal remedy and magic anymore. Both work. Both fail. Your hand closes around the doll. Outside, the mist is deeper now, not for fear, just for truth. It folds around rooftops and wells like it's correcting mistakes the light made earlier. From somewhere by the chapel, the high bell rings again. Now you start to wonder whether that one is for you. You carry the satchel the way one might carry ashes, light, but full of meaning, too precious or too dangerous to set down without ceremony. It swings gently against your hip as you walk, bouncing in quiet rhythm with your steps. With every movement, it releases the faintest trace of cloves and dried rose, a scent so subtle it feels like it's not for you. but for something watching from just beyond the fog's edge. The streets are less familiar now. You've wandered deep into the town's quieter bones, the back lanes where tools rust in rain barrels, where no firelight peeks from windows, and where even the crows keep their distance. These are not streets of importance. These are paths for those who have slipped from the stories. You stop beneath an overhang where someone once sold apples. At least, that's what the painting on the wood plaque shows. No apples remain. Just a splintering cart and a looped piece of string where a coin pouch used to hang. Ahead, smoke coils up from a square stack, but it doesn't smell of bread. It carries something darker, bitter. You follow it around the edge of a mud-packed lane, where ground-level doorways sink into the hillside like collapsed mouths, and that's when you see it, a hut, small, crooked, almost laughing at its own lean. Smoke huffs out the chimney in short gusts, like whatever's burning inside is reluctant to stay lit. You'd think it abandoned, except for the flicker of movement behind the filmy cloth stretched across the doorway. You knock, but lightly. A pause. Then, fingers hook the cloth aside. He stands barely taller than your shoulder, with hair the color of tin and a gaze too sharp for someone so plainly built. His cheeks are darkened, not by dirt, but soot, and his sleeves are scorched at the edges. A mangy cat darts between his feet and disappears behind him into the hut without acknowledgement. "You don't look sick," he says without greeting. You don't answer. Not right away. It doesn't feel like a question that wants one. Not a monk, either, he adds, eyes narrowing now. Too clean for a cart boy, too tall for a gravedigger. He steps back and lets the cloth fall behind you as you enter. Inside, clutter. The smell of burnt wood, wet cloth, vinegar, and dried fennel. Hanging from cords above are bundles of sticks, pelts, skinning knives, and gloves. Gloves with claws sewn onto the fingers. You've never been inside the home of a plague rat catcher, and you wonder now why no one warned you they existed. Because of course they do. Every town relies on someone who works in whispers around walls, who peels back floorboards looking for soft, squeaking signs of the world's undoing. "My name's Foss," he says flatly, tossing a piece of leather onto a bench that doubles as a table. "If you're looking for the wise woman, I'm not her. You say you already found the wise woman. That earns you a smirk. Toothless on the right. And you survived her tea. A marvel." He snatches up a kettle, pours something thick and brown into a bowl. Then, he dunks a cloth in it and begins scrubbing one of his gloves. You watch him without meaning to. "You're looking clean for someone who crawled their way out," he says without looking up. You blink. He meets your eyes then, a tiny gleam catching just inside his. "I smell the grave on people. You, though it's old earth, not new. Like the dirt's had time to regret burying you." You don't protest. He's not wrong. "Folks think it's the fleas," he adds. "Always the fleas. As if disease makes you itch first and die second. But they don't live the way rats live. You watch rats long enough, see where they hide when the air turns cold. You start feeling the pulse of sickness before the first cough. And then, after a beat, it's not the rats. Not really. There's an odd certainty to how he says it. A strange, studied rhythm in his explanation. You realize he's not just guessing. This is someone who's dissected more than vermin. "There's rot that starts in the walls," he continues, fingers brushing the fur on another glove. "Under wattle and thatch. That scratching in the eaves isn't always paws. Sometimes it's breath." He snorts softly. "I found 2 up in the old canner's roof last week. No children. No rats. Just silence. Took the roof off piece by piece. Found the cantor and his wife wedged into the beams like they tried giving their house back the breath it had given them. You're not sure whether it's metaphor or memory." He pushes the bowl away and digs into a pouch beside the hearth. Produces 3 long iron nails. They're blackened, old, clearly used. He sets them on the table with a deliberate sort of reverence. "One for the lintel, one for the threshold, one for wherever you stood when they named you dead." You ask why? "To confuse the spirit following you," he replies. "Old folk remedy. He gives a dry smile. Don't look so sure it doesn't work. You glance at the satchel hanging from your hip. He sees it. She gave you the girl, didn't she? He says, with the bent needle through the foot. You nod. He picks up the iron nail nearest his hand and offers it to you. For the foot of the girl. She won't walk far without matching iron. You accept it more out of ritual than belief. Name, he asks. You hesitate, then murmur your name slowly, testing whether it still fits in your own mouth. He cocks his head. Good. Use it when you carve it next. Wood. Stone. Doesn't matter. Just make sure it's yours. Otherwise, you wake up with someone else's bones under your skin. You feel a chill, a real one this time, crawl up your arms. Rat catchers weren't just pestmen in this century. In villages with limited options, they were also watchers. The ones who shambled through fields after dark, said half-prayers over stillborns, and ferried messages meant only for walls to hear. Foss, you realize, is less a man than a hinge, something set between the cracked world of what breathes and what doesn't. Go, he says abruptly, standing. Before night remembers your face. You don't argue. Back outside, the chill catches you harder than before. The sun's given up entirely now, dipping behind whatever low hills cradle this haunted place. The mist thickens once more, returning to your boots, your chest. You walk not with haste, but with intention. The bell rings in the chapel's tower again. Twice this time. No one answers. It rings as you pass a wall of ivy and a sunken doorframe. Inside, a candle burns unattended. You wonder who left it, or whether it's for you. The door to the candlelit house is half split at the frame and softer than it should be under your knuckles when you knock. No answer, but the flame inside doesn't flicker from your presence. No stir in the room, no sudden shadow. It just sits there in the middle of it, steady and defiant, white against the gray. You hesitate at the threshold, and something deep in your chest urges you not to enter. Not out of fear, more respect. Like accidentally stepping into a moment that's still unfolding, even if no one remains inside to witness it. The walls, once blue, are wiped to a stained bone white. There are lines carved into the beams, the kind used for tallies or keeping track of borrowed grain. And across one splintered support beam, someone has chalked letters you struggle to read in the dimness. Deus audit, idiom in Nice. God hears, even in the dead. Your fingers find an odd chill at the edge of the table. There's parchment here, not laid out neatly but stacked in a pose of fatigue, left as though someone fully meant to return but simply didn't. You sift through the top piece. A name, not yours, but adjacent. Elric, another variation born of half-heard syllables and smeared ink. Beneath it, a thick stain where someone must have tried to blot out a mistake. Printed there in small hand. Buried. Grave number 28. North Slope. Crossfell. It strikes you that the record is wrong in every useful way. Someone took great care to write it. Someone else made peace with the inaccuracy. In another century, this would be a curiosity, a clerk's error. But now, a wrong name is a death sentence that sticks. You flip the page. Another record. This one bearing multiple corrections. 5 different inks. 3 scribes' sigils, clearly debated and refiled. Some towns recorded burials and deaths through chained ledgers stored in the church nave, but others had scrollkeepers like this, tucked away on a corner lane, minding the dead like a grocer minds turnips. Apparently, they weren't just tallying numbers. They were trying to fix them, rearranging the living like rows in a poorly organized hymn. A soft sound reaches your ears. Not a knock. Not footfall. A parchment slipping from a shelf behind you. You turn. No draft, no one nearby. You pick it up. There, strung across the top of the unrolled length, you see it. A dark blot of mulberry ink, fresher than the rest. Its shade still pulling into the fibers of the page like a bruise slow to form. Someone had been writing, perhaps moments before. Your eyes trace the transcript. Name entered reversed. Must verify. Do not assign grave until sworn. Beneath it, The initials are smudged, a blot where a seal once pressed, and a question mark scratched beside it. You step back. The world outside this place feels immediately more stable, if only by contrast. And yet, you linger. On the shuttered wall near the hearth, you notice something framed in rope, a small parchment tacked to the wood with care. You approach. It wavers when your breath touches it, not tied taut, but floating slightly loose like it's always on the verge of letting go. This one bears no date, no name. It reads, "Some souls are whispered. If you speak them too soon, they don't stay." You stare at it longer than you mean to. Then you return to the desk, find a corner, and brush away dust. You scribble your name. Not how they wrote it. Not the version they buried or struck out. Yours. Real, imperfect. The one you remember half by sound and half by muscle. It trembles in your grasp, but comes alive on the parchment with weight. You fold it, place it in the open shelf, and leave it there among the others, among the names that wanted to be remembered properly. Outside, the mist rests lower now, more resigned, less eager to press into your lungs. There is a warmth in you, something subtle but unmistakable, like the body remembering what it meant to be a body. You follow the bend in the road without question. The sky attempts color, but cannot commit. Just pale lavender hints between the tendrils of returning soot from where the town continues its burning. Whether it's homes, herbs, or people, the air smells scorched. You pass by a man ladling water from a barrel onto the stone step of his shop, not to clean, but to cool. He nods at you. No surprise, no pause, as though even a dead man who walks by counts only as background noise now. On the next street, a rooster crows out of time. Then a door slams. And from behind that door, laughter. A child's laugh. Full, brief, then shushed. It stings slightly more than any cough or prayer. You bring your hand to the satchel again, grounding yourself with the weight of it. The doll inside still there. The clove still sharp in your memory. You step aside as a small procession passes. 5 people, maybe 6, carrying nothing but cloths and rope. One drags a rickety cart with what looks like empty linens folded into squares, but you know now, that's only how it begins. The last in the line sees you. An older woman with bruises around her eyes from barely slept nights. Her mouth curves downward, not with sorrow, but effort, like holding a tune that tried to slip. She points toward the hill again, the north slope. "Grave markers are shifting," she mutters. "They're being stolen. We need someone to check which plots have sunk." You don't ask who's taking the markers. The answer could be kindness or kindling. She presses a wooden slat into your hand without waiting for consent. A crude sign painted with a shaky hand. Elric, unclear. She mistakes you for a groundskeeper. Or maybe knows exactly who she handed it to. You carry it anyway. Through the next square, past shattered baskets and barrels too warped to hold rain. A hen scurries ahead of you, then doubles back, startled. You almost laugh. Don't. Ahead, the northern side of the town. Slightly elevated, crowned not with houses, but with hedges. And behind those, the row of shallow earth. If there is a place to feel forgotten again, it will be here. The mist purifies as you climb, not gone, but fainter, like something brushing past instead of pressing down. The church bell rings again once. You stop beside a cross that has no name and no finish, just a stick lashed to another. Its base is loose in the ground, leaning east as if listening. You glance to the grave beside it, slightly shifted. One corner of the mound caved gently in. You almost don't recognize it, but you do. The grass topping your former grave is crooked now. A boot print, maybe yours, has pressed into the edge. You kneel by it, and then, carefully, without irony, you push the wooden slat the old woman gave you into the soil. The words face west. The wrong name, yes, but under it, space, perhaps, for future correction. For now, unclear will do. You sit beside the grave for longer than you mean to, your knees in the damp, cold earth, your hands resting loosely on thin grass that still hasn't decided whether to die or grow. The town has moved on without you, from this plot, from your name, from the hour they once rang the bells in your honor. The sign planted in the soft earth beside you says almost nothing, but it speaks more truth than a dozen death scrolls. Unclear. You trace the word with one finger, just once. It smears faintly where the paint hasn't quite set. A song drifts faintly from between the hedges behind you, delicate and tuneless, like someone humming only to keep from forgetting how. Soft footsteps follow it. You don't turn. There's a calm in this moment, a strange relief. Actually, just resting beside the place you did not end. Birds have returned to the trees on the edge of the slope. Not many. 2 sparrows, half-drenched and puffed like dandelions, one cutting the silence with a question-shaped chirp. You wonder how the animals know, how they always seem to tiptoe where the wrong dead are buried and avoid where the right ones lie still. There must be something about the soil, how it feels under claw or paw. Lighter in places, thinner. A saying lingers out of memory, the kind passed in puffs of ale and churchyard gossip. The body leaves its shape behind for a day or two, like steam from soup. You don't know if it's scripture, superstition, or sheer rural nonsense. But sitting here now, you feel undeniably shaped. Not whole, but formed again. You pull the satchel into your lap and slowly undo the ties. The doll slips out easily, already warm from the walk. The clove petals chime softly against your knuckles. You hold it for a moment. Then you rest it on the side of the grave and press it gently into the dirt. No prayer needed. The grave has already heard you. You stand. And this time, you walk toward town with a steadiness edging closer to purpose. The bell has stopped ringing. The mist has uncurled slightly from the rooftops. Roof lines are visible again. The slope flattens beneath your feet, and every step feels like your own. You reach the edge of the lane again, where the town curls back into itself like a hand drawing in during sleep. Someone's hammering a plank into a shutter, either for protection or privacy. It's unclear, but everyone does things quietly now. The noise of grief faded weeks ago. What's left is something gentler. A long breath held. You drift toward a small alley lined with tanner's posts and crooked shelves shuttered with loose cloth. At its end waits an old man in a low-back chair tipped against a wall streaked gray with time. His eyes follow your approach, steady but not intrusive. He doesn't ask who you are. He just gestures with one finger toward the stand beside him. You glance down. A row of tablets. Thin wood. Sand smoothed and blank except for shallow grooves already cut and waiting. He reaches beneath his seat and retrieves a stylus tip embedded in a chunk of chalk rock. Knowing today. Write it, he says, voice hoarse. You hesitate. Whatever version, he adds. It doesn't have to be born right. It just has to be real when it leaves your hand. You kneel slightly to reach the surface. Pick up the stylus. It feels too light for something so final. You don't know why you're doing this, but it feels right, like checking a lock before leaving or thanking a meal once eaten. You write your name. Again, one slow stroke at a time until the shape of it could echo through wood if a hand ran across it. He watches, doesn't smile, doesn't frown, just watches with the patient familiarity of someone who's seen every spelling of regret. When it's done, he nods once and slides the board into a shelf tucked in the side of the wall, among dozens of others. Then he marks a notch on the ledge above, beside 20 or 30 already scratched there. That's for the ones who return and remember enough to write, he mutters. You thank him. He leans back into the shadow of his doorway again, letting the sun mark his shoes, not his face. You pass through the center of the market square, such as it is. The stalls are wrapped up, their awnings puckered and spotted. A few baskets lie turned on their sides. One still holds dried figs, completely untouched. Not a fly in sight. You aren't even sure if figs are still considered food. In fearful times, some shops claim they've been cursed for tasting sweet, while others starved. No one wants sugar on their hands during a plague. You follow a narrow lane to the west end of the square where the houses grow finer, but not happier. The Scrollkeeper once lived here, if memory serves. The man who wrote your name first, or wrong. What was his name? You pause outside the stoop. There's no light through the crack in the shutters. You don't even remember his face. Just the sensation in the room. Hurried wax, a dry cough. One candle burned too high for too many hours. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he knew you weren't gone. It's tempting to hate him. Tempting, but pointless. You walk past the house. Leave it to its quiet. When you round the corner, you reach something familiar. Something you weren't looking for, but now realize you needed to find. An old wall plastered and pasted on notes. The parchment yellowed and hardening with age. Some bare names. Others prayers, scratched out with trembling hope. One even has a pressed flower sealed into the wax of a thumbprint. And halfway down the third row, you freeze. There you are. Or what was thought to be you. A scrawl of your name, corrected hastily, but still wrong in a strange way. Beneath it, for words. Too silent to tell. There's something about those words. An accusation and a lament in one. You reach into your satchel and pull out the iron nail Foss gave you. You weigh it in your palm, then place it on the note. Press it there. Let it rest. You don't tear it down. You don't need to erase the old death. You just don't need to carry it anymore. The air is shifting again. A breeze brushes against your arms, lifting the corner of another parchment beside yours, so thin it nearly disappears. This one simply says, "Return if able." You leave it pinned in place. You walk now without drifting, past long shadows of eaves and the size of homes as they cool into evening. Somewhere behind you, the Scrollkeeper's house is giving off heat through the cracked brick. Somewhere a child coughs and is hushed by soft pats. You pull your wrap tighter, not from chill, but from something else, an instinct, maybe, to keep in what's rejoined, stitched back from the grave. People disappear in war, in plague, in floods and fire, but there's a strange kindness left behind when their names don't. It binds the living to something better than memory. It binds them to responsibility. And maybe that's what you are now. A record not crossed in ink, a story still breathing, quieter now, but determined to be told. The bells remain silent. You don't need them anymore. The mist returns in the evening like a dog that was never quite trained properly, slowly, expectantly, curling around your ankles, urging you to go home, though you're not sure where that is anymore. The streets have gone soft again, not in sound, but in shape. Stone puddles don't reflect so much as absorb. Edges of houses blur. The names on signs might as well be wishful guesses. The only firm thing beneath your feet is the path north, back over the slope where the graveyards lie waiting. You didn't plan to return to the pit, but your feet, as if summoned by the weight in your chest, decide otherwise. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's the unfinishedness of it. Maybe it's that stubborn need to see what you missed. You walk. Stone gives way to packed, moist ground. Your boots press softly into it, and you can feel the shallowness of earth disturbed too frequently. Every fourth step thuds instead of crunching. Unsettled graves. Unmarked ditches. This isn't the steep hill of saints and lost children. This is the lower side, the pit side. The side where names weren't always included. Where prayers were shortened or skipped entirely. Where some cartmen pretended they didn't see the movement in a limb before letting it roll off the wood. At the edge of the slope, you see it. Wider than you remember, deeper than it ought to be. A long trench lined in raw folds of soil that the weather hasn't yet hardened. Some timbers lie beside it, meant for tomorrow's load. For bodies wrapped in fabric rest on a cart still hitched to a mare who's gone to sleep standing, her head swaying slightly. The pit exhales faintly, a bad breath from an open wound. Still, you step closer. No workers in sight. No monks murmuring in clove-soaked cloth. Just the scent of old tallow, dust, and something like marjoram. For a moment, you stand above it. Not near the edge, but near enough to see where your body might have landed. Where it nearly did. Someone's placed a stone there, Not over a body, just between two. It's polished smooth on one side, and a faint symbol is pricked into it, as though scratched with a broken brooch, a circle with a line through it. Not Christian, not anything official, just a sign for forgotten, or maybe forgiven. You sit, carefully, not near the cart, not near the mare. You sit at the far end of the trench, where no one's been laid yet. Just the raw dirt, cool and soft like what you'd expect in early autumn. The earth here hasn't held anything yet. Not grief, not flesh, not the weight of a name. It is clean, if such a term even belongs to ground like this. There's a saying from Lombardy, written in a letter by someone who allegedly saw hundreds buried in one trench. The ground swallowed quiet, and nothing protested. And yet, you think, something in this earth does protest. You feel it beneath your hand. The tension, the pulse. It remembers the weight, even when the bodies are gone. And here, in this pit, it almost mourns. You lie back for a moment, not out of drama, not even to test some memory, just to rest, to become aligned for a moment with the world that nearly kept you. The sky above is nothing now, not starless, not lit, just an in-between hue. The fog reduces everything to the distance of a breath. You close your eyes, and you remember something you didn't expect. Voices, not the grave workers, not the monks, a family, standing beside the cart, someone pressing a hand to your foot, a thumb brushed across your cheek. Then the words, "He's ready." Maybe it wasn't priestly, just practical. No one had time to verify. No one wanted to risk it, either. The body was still, the fingernails dull, the lips too pale to argue. You hit the checklist most towns had started to adopt. Limp limbs, no sweat for 3 hours, mouth slack, jaw soft, no breath in fog glass. There was no glass, just judgment. You hear a sound behind you, a man's voice, low and whispering something too fast to catch. You sit up, squint. No one. Your fingers sink into the soil to steady yourself. It's not damp, not fully dry either. It smells exactly as you'd think the near dead would smell. And yet, you feel safer than you have all day. Here, in the pit, of all places. Maybe because there's honesty here. No one is pretending in this ditch. No one's wearing a mask or offering tea or writing your name beside an asterisk. You brush your hands off and rise. The cart horse snorts once in its sleep and shifts her footing slightly. The wraps on the bodies flutter just faintly, caught by breathless wind. You pass close enough to one to see the notch in his toe seam. Cloth stitched too fast. An old cloth sign marks a name. Tomas, maybe. He was somebody's maybe. You move on. Further down the slope, where the stone wall resumes at shoulder height, there's a small gate twisted open. Ivy curls around the hinges. Someone's candle still burns in a clay basin barely shielded from the wind. Most likely left by a mourner who couldn't stand to say the last words. Or maybe lit by someone who lights them for everyone. You dip your fingers into the wax, still soft. You press it to your wrist, not hard, just enough to feel the warmth insist you are still part of the breathing world. And then a voice. Not imagined, not fading. Behind you, someone steps lightly. You turn. It's a boy. Thin, muddy-kneed, no shoes. He looks at the cart, then at you. Doesn't say anything for a breath or two. "This where you're from?" he finally asks, pointing gently toward the pit. You nod. "Used to be," you murmur. He studies you like people study fire, interested, but cautious. Then, "You still dead." A grin tries to form at the corners of your mouth, but won't commit. "I don't think so," you say. The boy shrugs, picks up a broken sprig of ash leaves from the ground, and lays it on the cart beside an elbow. "They like that," he explains. Tells him the crows won't take the name. You look closer. There are more on the cart. Little offerings, tucked into cloth seams, cracks in the wood. Someone's kept this tradition going. You've just now started noticing. The boy hums a little as he walks away. That same tuneless tune from before. Now facing the town again. You wonder how much of it remembers you walked this road alive. You set off downhill once more, lighter somehow, though the grave still rides at your back. The streets are warming now with the orange glow of oil lamps shuttered tightly in windows. One door opens ahead of you, releasing a slice of song. A woman singing a lullaby, and a moment later, closes, sealing the song away like candlelight in glass. The pit does not follow you, but it is with you. And for the first time since waking in your box, you feel unafraid of the dark. Your boots brush softly through drying straw scattered across the lane, laid not for comfort, but for silence. It soaks the damp, dulls the sound of the plagued feet, and sometimes hides the blood where it shouldn't be. The rat catcher knew all about it, you realize now. Foss didn't speak like a man guessing at shadows. He spoke like someone who counted them. And tonight, there are so many. Not people. The shadows. You pass under a low beam arch carved with a faded creation tableau. All the saints smiling, all the angels clean. The wood is chipped now, water-warped, and moss has begun to push through between the kneeling figures. You duck your head, more out of routine than reverence. And there, waiting at the edge of town, is a man crouched beside a bundle of cloth and bone. You almost don't see him. Your eyes skim past, until they adjust to the idea that someone could still be stillness, even while breathing. He rises as you approach, cane in one hand, a large bag slung across his back, and at his feet, 6 cats. Maybe more. They coil around him like he's fire, and they're drawn to sleep. One leaps to his shoulder and rests as casually as if he were a windowsill. "You're the walker," he says, nodding with a slight smile. He doesn't ask. "It's all assumption," said gently. "I've heard about you." My tabby came back smelling of grave wax. He gestures to the cat now grooming its chest mid-sentence. You offer no explanation. "You've given enough names today. Foss told me you might be around," he continues. "Said you've been learning lessons meant for people twice your age and several times your death count." You tilt your head. He catches the look. "I'm the rat man with the good boots," he says lightly. "Or I was. The guild's gone now, what little guild we had. Then, with a small grin, we were never much for parliamentary order. Just people with sacks, cats, and no sense of smell." One of the cats hisses softly. He shushes it with a practiced sweep of fingers. He nods toward the bundle on the ground. "Apologies for the form," he mutters. "They didn't tell me this one had already been written down. Again, was your name, I think. Or close. Third one this week to be tagged as Ilrich." Your heart stills, but only for a moment. He notices. "Not you," he says. "Not now." He slices the string on the bundle. Inside, fabric. Wrapped bones. Carefully cleaned, palely yellowing. The teeth are unchipped. Hands folded. Respectful. "Sometimes the central clerks send us old ones," he explains. "From the pits that were too shallow. The recent rain's been uncovering what's meant to stay tucked. I tidy them. Re-scroll them. They go to the vault after that, the ossuary line. You ask if he always unwraps them like that, under the open sky. He chuckles. "Of course not. But you've got a special circumstance. Figured, maybe this one tangled with yours. Wanted to make sure no soul was mistaking a body. Happens more often than formal folk admit." He brushes one bone with a small patch of mint-soaked cloth. "Still, this one's not you. You've walked too far. Your steps belong to breath again." Then he pauses, glancing up. "Though tell me, do your shoulders ache come dusk?" "They do. Vaguely. Often." He nods as if expecting it. "Yeah," he says. "That's the coffin still catching up." He places the bones gently in a small crate lined with rosemary branches. "To smell like blessing," he adds. You find yourself watching him with unfamiliar comfort. "We're the soft reapers," he explains casually. "Not the ones with horses and blades. We tidy. We correct. We listen when a cat scratches too long by a wall. We hear you." Another pause, even when you'd rather no one did. The cats hiss together suddenly, 3 of them bristling, claws flashing. He looks past you, and from deeper in the field emerges a dog, lean and gray, with something feral in the gait. But the cats settle within seconds. The rat man makes no move, so neither do you. The dog pauses at a low fence, sniffs the air, turns, and vanishes into mist. Signs, he mutters. They used to say black dogs followed plague carriers. Now they just come where the forgetting's thick. Not evil, just watchful. You get one. It usually means some part of you still isn't convinced it survived. You wonder for a moment if yours has followed you all evening. You remember the whisper in the trench. He ties the cloth bundle closed again, quicker this time, reverently. Where will it go? You ask. He gestures toward the east. Ossuary barns, kept out past the grain mills. Bones laid clean in ashwood racks. Not stacked, not piled. Set like books. Some we carve names on. Others, he raises a brow. We let remain stories meant for no one. You help him lift the crate. The weight surprises you. Not heavy, but denser than you'd imagined. Like bones carry the memory of breath even when emptied. As you walk beside him, he says softly, "Used to be, souls were measured by how many wept when the coffin closed. Now, it's how many people revise the record." He chuckles again as he walks, boots ankle deep in damp straw. You, my friend, have a whole library of corrections. You pass by a wall stone at a split in the path. Carved into its face, barely visible in the low mist, is an old local motto. Better a mistaken living than a final death. You don't speak, but you reach into your satchel and rest your hand on the bent doll as if to say, "I know." The rat man stops a few yards later and lets the crate slide to the ground. "This is where I wait," he says. "You won't need me past here." You ask why. "Because you're getting warmer," he says. "And soon you'll be too alive for talk like mine." You want to ask where he'll go. If he walks back into fog or into some ledger where all the soft reapers are kept between herb lists and rat tallies. But something tells you he's already part of the ground. And the cats don't watch where he goes when he walks away. They follow you now, just a few paces. Then they pause. Then only their eyes remain visible, blinking once, twice, then gone. The streets ahead open again, wide enough to forget burial dates, narrow enough that you must turn sideways to let doubts pass. You walk slower now, not for weariness, but from some strange and private reverence. You returned. No bells ring anymore. A candle flickers in a chapel window, and just for a moment, you see someone pressing a new name into wet wax. Yours. The streets before you grow narrower again, more intimate, like channels in a forgotten map. Alleys where people once whispered during procession or opened their windows to let out holy smoke. Now they hold their breath for different reasons, not out of reverence. Simply disbelief that life continues at all. You pass a fence wound tightly in twine, bundles of dried lavender tied at every post. Lavender against plague air, a local remedy if not a functional one. The smell is faint now, half washed by days of drizzle and damp fog. Still, the effort is visible. Someone tried to make the world more bearable here. Beyond that, you turn a corner and stop. A circle of people, maybe 8 or 10, stand in silence around a brazier at the center of a courtyard. Not in prayer, not in mourning, just watching. The flames flick in slow rhythm, not roaring, not soft. Thick herbs laid on the coals release clouds of sweet smoke into the air, heavy with sage, chamomile, something darker. A warden swings a small bronze censer in slow arcs, mumbling as he walks the inner circle. You can't catch the words. They aren't meant for you. They aren't meant for anyone, not precisely. Ritual doesn't care if it's heard. No one in the circle makes eye contact. Each is wrapped loosely in linen, scarves over their mouths, cloves stitched into the folds. What these people fear isn't death. They've lived through too much of it for that. But unmarked death, unfinished death. Death without smelling the right herbs or hearing the last cough. You keep your distance, leaning against a low wall, respectful in your watching. The warden halts, drops the censer 3 times, gently, not with ceremony, but with rhythm. The flame rises slightly. A hand from the back of the group places a new bundle into the brazier. The fire licks it, almost fondly. You realize this isn't mourning. This is fumigation. Not just of air, of memory. Mid-century physicians believed illness traveled through miasma, bad air, corrupted wind. In London, in Florence, even in Marseille, records describe people swinging herbs in their homes while windows shut tight. The logic was this: if the air carries death, better to feed it bitterness. Here it seems more human than that. Not cleansing, confessing. You catch the faint chant of one woman. Pass from house, pass from skin, pass from bone, pass no more. She repeats it until the fire flares again, and then silence returns. One by one they leave. Not in pairs, not with hugs. Alone. They don't look at the ashes they leave behind. You remain. The warden, his head scarcely visible under his hood, drags the final coals wide with an iron fork. Then he speaks. Come. You blink. Me? His voice is mild. If you come with fire on you, it's better to know. You step forward. Slowly. He doesn't bless, doesn't ask questions. Just lifts a lighted taper from the brazier edge and raises it near your chest. Not touching, just close enough to feel its warmth. Name, he asks. You hesitate. His tone remains gentle. Don't worry. Most give the ones they remember first. The fire will tell me if it's honest. You say it. Not too loudly. He studies the flame. It quiets. Almost folds toward you. Then, delicately, he puts it out by pinching it between two twigs of wormwood. Close enough, he says. You ask what would have happened if the fire had flared. He shrugs. Different ritual then. More bitter herbs. Chest compresses. You would have slept in the dark house under the East Bridge for 3 days. Burned dried heather. Chewed iron bark. Would it cure me? Don't know. He replies honestly. Only ever worked on 2 men and 1 pig. But it buys time. He begins folding cloth over the ashes, pinning the ends like a heavy letter, tucking it inside an oilskin pouch. I'll scatter this where the ones who linger go, he explains. Back behind the sheep trail, just west of the birch grove. Quiet place. Good soil. They deserve quiet. You watch him work, hands clean in a deliberate sort of way. Not naturally, just unnaturally unstained by so much death. How do you do it, you finally ask. He stops, frowns gently. Do what? Handle it all, you murmur. The forgetting. He breathes out slowly. Doesn't answer right away. Dusts off his hands. Then he looks at you. Eyes crinkled like parchment in his hooded frame. No one forgets, he says. They just run out of words. That sentence sits in the room longer than the smoke. Outside the courtyard, the world resumes with awkward quiet. A woman drops a pail near the baker's alley. A child mutters old rhymes in a melody that loops like a starling's call. Someone, somewhere, slams a shutter as if trying to hold in heat that drifted out days ago. You keep walking. There's a rhythm in your steps now, not quite structured, but settled. Your knee clicks gently every 4th step. You hadn't noticed it earlier. Maybe it's old. Maybe it's something the grave left behind. One more turn, and you round into another row of homes, smaller now. Not perished, just cottages clinched between hedges and cracked cobble. The smell here is different. Lighter. A kind of dry sweetness. Clove, yes. Lemongrass. And something more familiar. Rosemary baked in oil. A girl stands outside her door, rinsing her arms with what looks like flower water. She glances up and gives a wary nod. Not unkind. Just typical. You nod back. Did you hear? She asks, drying her skin with a willow twine cloth. New list gone up. They're saying your name again. You pause. My name. Yes, she says. It was removed. Now it's there again, with a line beside it. Unsure. You sit on the low stone fence near her gate. Who keeps writing it? She pours water around a pair of thyme bushes near her steps. Everyone, she says plainly. People argue. Some say you shouldn't come back. Some say you weren't really gone at all. She shrugs with the ease of youth. They forget your name, and then they argue over the forgetting. You ask without smiling, "What would you write?" She doesn't turn around, just says, "Alive enough." Then she carries the pail inside and closes the door. Alive enough. That's what you are, isn't it? Not healed, not fixed, not fully seen, but not buried anymore. A bell rings in the distance again. Duller, slower, not chipped, just weary. You get up, and in your satchel, the clove sachet rests against your leg, still whole. The little wax doll, warm, familiar yours. Your steps are yours now too. And death, at last, does not follow you. It simply watches from a respectful distance, as it once should have. The late hour has peeled the edge from things now. Rooftops half visible, language half whispered, your memory of the day half wrapped in something you can no longer fully explain. The town exhales in slow, uneven pulses, no longer braced, but not yet healed. The streets glisten where rain tried and failed to fall, leaving only fog that thickens at the ankles. You wonder where to go next. Not home, a concept that frays every time you try to grab at it, but inward. The moments have grown quieter, and now your steps aren't accidental. They lead you somewhere. Toward stone, toward age, toward something old enough to hold your questions without trying to answer them. You follow a narrow passage that bends into the earth almost imperceptibly, something more like a fold in the land than a road. It dips between hollow buildings, their windows narrow and sunk against the walls like closed eyes. Past the iron bell hook bent too low, past a carved beam you're sure bears writing, though nothing readable remains. This is the church few speak of. The other one. The stones are different. Older, bone white and blackened in streaks, like fire once tested its loyalty and lost interest. The archway that leads to its door bears a sigil once considered sacred, an upturned hand carved into a circle, fingerless, each digit subtly shaped into a flame. You've heard of this place in fragments. From overheard whispers, half sung by women drying linens too close to the trench. From sputtering old men who murmured it as they stirred damp clay near grave markers. They call it the Church of the Aloof Relic, because holiness doesn't seem to live here, though something does. You approach slowly, the earth crunching beneath your heel on scattered white flakes. Not snow, not salt either. You glance down. Bone dust, crushed finely, purposefully, sprinkled for blessing. Or warning. The church doors don't creak. They simply resist. You press until they relent with an exhale that feels more ancient than wooden. Inside, darkness, then color. A red light burns above the altar, a sharp contrast to every chapel and sickbed you've passed so far. No candles line the nave. Instead, wooden sconces the walls, but they hold stones, not flames. Charred black stones that cast no light, resting there in deliberate ritual. You step further in. No pews, just long mats laid out in quiet succession, facing east, as if at any moment the sun might remember them. There's someone near the altar, cloaked, hooded, bent forward. Not asleep exactly. Then the faintest movement. A lift of the head. Eyes catch yours. No welcome. No fear. They gesture for you to come forward. A tilt of the wrist. Not encouraging, just allowing. You cross the threshold. As your feet touch the final stone before the altar, a change settles in the air. Pressure, like stepping from forest into storm. You see now what sits beside the cloaked figure. A box. Not large, hand-length. Covered in heavy leather and hemispheres of iron. Tied shut with waxed cord. Old. It radiates the kind of age that outlives name. You point toward it, voice low. That's it. They nod, slowly. You expected something grander. There's nothing to mark it as holy. Nothing to suggest it should sit inside a place of worship, if a place like this can even be called that with confidence anymore. But it holds that quality found only in true relics. Indifference. It doesn't want to be seen. It simply is. You ask, what does it do? The figure speaks softly. It listens. You hesitate. To prayers. To confusion, they reply. To grief. Mistaken ones. Final thoughts spoken too soon. They point to a mark scratched into the altar step, faintly visible even beneath centuries of soot. A circle with a tall cross bisecting it. Not Christ's cross. Not righteous. It resembles the tally mark used by scrollkeepers when they rewrite a name and require the older copy to be discarded. It hears the buried names, they say. You ask what happens to them next. The hooded figure's voice drops further. No one knows. We are merely the shelf. They lower their head and reach down, drawing up a slate. On it, a dozen names are scratched in red chalk, neatly crossed through. You spot a shape familiar to yours. Not quite, but a version this place may have heard already. They nod toward your satchel, gently, like a schoolmaster reminding a young scribe to turn in their parchment. You unfasten the drawstrings, feel the wax doll shift, and know, without quite knowing, that it does not belong here. But something else does. The slip from the ledger post, maybe. The record with the violet ink. The one that said, returned. Seen east of town. Unsure. You still have it. Tucked into the cloth band just beside the spare thread of rosemary. You draw it out. Place it beneath the altar. A sound follows. Dull. Subterranean. Not a bell, not a voice. More like a breath from beneath floorboards. Accepting. The figure speaks again. All relics perform one miracle only. Ours is discernment. You ask what that means for you. They shrug. It knows whether your name still belongs on the list. You stare at the box. Wonder whether it hummed when you entered. Whether it tilted ever so slightly forward. Whether it even knows what you are. A man mistaken by death, returned by air, repainted by ink and error and gentle neglect. A second chancer with a borrowed name stitched back into town legend. You ask, so am I meant to go now? They lean back, hands calm. No one who enters is ever told to leave. You smile just barely, and sit on one of the woven mats. No one speaks after that. The red stone light flickers overhead like a blood-bright star. Your breathing slows. The stone floor presses its lessons through the soles of your feet. You listen. There is quiet. Then the soft, absurd sound of a cat's paw pad brushing against stone. You look. One of Foss's cats. It curls at the edge of the mat, blinking once. Not in recognition, just acknowledgement. You are known again. Even here. You don't remember falling asleep there, but the warmth of waking says you must have. The mat beneath you has conformed to your shape, accepting your weight like it was always meant to be there. The air has cooled. Lighter now, less pressed down by candle smoke or the gravity of relic watching. The cat is gone, but in its place, nestled along the edge of your satchel, is a curl of yellowed wax paper, folded thrice, too carefully for randomness. You sit up slowly, joints stiff but lighter. You unfold it. 3 words, inked in the same familiar mulberry hue. Grave left open. You run your thumb across the final blot of ink. It dried fast, jagged around the letters. Done in haste. Or warning. It could mean anything. Could mean someone noticed the grave left behind. Could mean someone meant for it to be left open. Could mean it wasn't your grave after all. You slip the paper back into the inner fold of your satchel and rise to your feet, quietly, not to disturb anything, though nothing moves. The red stone still burns above the altar, dimmer than before. Not weaker, just satisfied. The hooded figure near the altar seems to be asleep now, or in prayer, it's hard to say. So you nod once, even if they can't see it, and pass back out through the double doors. This time, they don't resist you. Outside, it's cooler. The mist more translucent now, like silk stretched thin over everything. There's clarity in the shapes of the town again, though none of the sharpness has returned. You walk in soft steps, feeling your way forward by instinct more than memory, winding towards something that isn't quite direction. The air carries the scent of tallow and ash again, but mingled now with something gentler. Beeswax, boiled cloth, bread possibly, though that could be wishful thinking. You find the home by its candle, a single flame pressed against the mist from behind fogged window glass. A linen tied loosely across the top, offering no stern privacy, just the humble gesture of a life not yet ready to vanish. The door creaks open before you touch it. An old woman sits near the hearth, bent knees, thick braids coiled up like rope. Her hands work slowly over a shallow bowl, cradling melted wax and bits of tallow. 3 candles lie half-formed on the table. One still flickers. "You're later than most," she says, gently, without judgment. You tell her you weren't sure where to go. "No one is, really," she replies. "Before or after. But they come here when they remember breath." You sit across from her, stirring your palms over the fire without meaning to. She reaches toward you with her hand extended, just far enough to touch yours if you wish. You offer it. Her fingers are cool, a curious thing for someone sitting before flame. But her touch says certainty. It centers you. She reaches for a small flask and pours a spoonful of something honey-colored onto a cloth. The smell fills the air, ginger, old wine, something slightly sour like preserved lemon. She dabs your temples once, then your wrists. "This is what we do for the lived," she says. "An old tradition. Used to be done before funerals for those who'd lived too richly, in the hopes they'd dream less heavy on their way out. Now it's used for the ones who don't go." You relax against the chair. "If you'd like to stay," she says, "there's a bed upstairs." Then adds, "Not everyone stays through the dreaming, though. Some wake up partway and leave before their second heart sets." She smiles without lifting her eyes. "You'll know if that's you." You ask her softly, "Do many come here?" "As many that return to breathing," she replies, "which is more than they'll admit in church records." She pours another bowl of wax, this one tinted faint green by ground laurel. We light candles for the second livers. You notice them now over her shoulder, all those small flames dancing in slow rhythm across the mantle, some already melted low, hardly taller than a finger, each with a little tag tied in string beneath. Most unreadable from the soot, but others still have names, or parts of names. One of them matches yours, or close enough again. You ask if it's yours. She nods. "It was." Then she gestures toward a candle mold on the table that hasn't yet been poured. "But this one," she says, "might be yours now." You hold her gaze. Then you say your name, clear this time. Not shouted, not whispered, not spelled, just spoken. She carves the base of the unmelted wax stub with a small curved tool. Not decorative, a mark, something for the wick to remember when the flame gets there. "I once met a boy who woke up to the sound of his death being counted aloud," she murmurs. "He couldn't speak after that, just hummed when his heart beat wrong." Her hand is steady. She places the half-finished candle into a small iron holder. "No one hums anymore," she adds. "Now they sign their names to blank paper, or burn herbs in their shoes. No one wants to admit they died by mistake." You don't hum either, but you stay. You sit until your candle is shaped. She doesn't light it. "Not yet." "Take it," she says. "You don't carry the grave anymore, but you kept the earth." You thank her. She walks you to the door, hands still warm now. Wood plank underfoot, quiet cloth overhead. A house more sanctuary than shelter. Outside, dawn waits. Not brightly, not pink nor golden, just an easing. The fog pulling one layer back, but no more. You step slowly. The candle feels heavier in your pocket than it should, like it already knows how many times it wasn't burned. You cross the field you didn't know you remembered. It leads to a tall fence hemmed with rust and nettles. And beyond it, a grove of birch, thin and clean, still pale even in mist. Someone's hung charms here. Knotted string, cut bells from waist belts, chunks of beeswax strung along thread. It's the place Foss mentioned, west of the trail, where scattered names sink into silence with intention. You leave the candle nestled between 2 roots near the eldest tree. You don't light it, not because you're afraid, but because some things need to be carried a little longer. A name, once spoken, isn't truly claimed until silence hears it too, and the grove listens better than most. You leave the candle beneath the birch roots, and for the first time in days, or perhaps lives, you don't second-guess the placement. You don't pat the earth around it. You don't mark the tree. You don't look back. None of those things feel called for anymore. Not because they aren't sacred, but because the air has finally stopped demanding proof of your presence. The fog relents further. It hasn't broken entirely, but it's lifted like a veil just enough to show shoulders, rooftops, and outlines again. The world's shape is returning. Or else you've just grown into it again. You can't be sure anymore whether it's the town that's changed or you. Down the slope, the church bells remain unringing. A squirrel darts across the path ahead of you, its little claws kicking up pebbles as it vanishes between two sheds. A sign. A decoration of normal. Funny how strange life feels after it's forgotten you. The stillness you once interpreted as ominous now reveals itself for what it always was. Survival tempered into quiet. A woman leans from a window ahead. She huffs as she beats a dusty cloth against the sill. It unfurls like a flag, all muted stripes and holes, and you catch a scent off it. Dried barley, maybe cumin. She glances your way and raises a brow, almost smiling. But she doesn't greet you. She tells no one of your passing. You're just another figure walking through mourning. That's what it is now. Mourning. You walk toward the stream running through the lower town, where the stone bridge curves like a knuckle stretched in blessing, pretending the river hasn't dried to a trickle. There's moss there. A single boot print not your own, impressed maybe an hour ago. Someone else crossed. Someone else came here before you. You rest there briefly, letting the edge of the stone press into your legs. It's neither cruel nor soft, just honest. You watch the water. Nothing much floats in it. No leaf boats. No pedals. Just the current, thin and easy. A low voice to your left says, "You've still got dirt on your shoulder." You turn. It's the boy from the grave pit. No older than 10. Same bare feet, same muddy knees. His eyes are sharp enough to remember faces other people forget when the fog comes. "Didn't know people came back from that long gone," he adds, sitting beside you like an old friend. You dust your shoulder. The soil flakes off with one easy swipe. "I didn't mean to stay down," you say quietly. He shrugs. Most don't. You sit in that small stillness together. He hums again. That same floating tune, still without words. And beside it, like call to response, someone across the bridge hums it back. A woman picking herbs by the fence. Her hands calloused. Her eyes almost closed. She doesn't look up. "See," the boy murmurs. You remember. And now someone else does, too. You turn slightly. Who was buried in that open grave? He hurts his brow trying to answer. Don't know his name. Might have been one meant for you. Might have been for no one. He scratches his neck. Sometimes the names just fall to whoever's nearest. You let that linger a moment. The boy hops up. "I'm going," he says. "Want me to tell them you're walking again?" You squint. "Tell who?" He grins. All gaps, a child's grin. The ones underfoot. And then he runs into the scattered mist curling across the field, shoeless, laughing to himself, vaulting over the stump that marks where the old gallows pole once stood. You breathe out slowly and stand. It's easier now. The ache isn't gone, but it's no longer the grave's kind of ache. Just bones, just weight. You take one last glance at the water, then back across the bridge. The path turns into a narrow route that tightens between two aging buildings, where the thatch roof droops and hides the sun. Beneath one of the windows, a chalk mark has been erased and drawn 3 times over. A message begins to form. The last writing left untouched says, "Leave a name. Take a name." So you do. You wipe away the faintest corner and write yours in quick, small letters in the shadow of someone else's misremembering. And then, below it, without thinking, you write the name from the scroll, the wrong one, and the one from beneath the wax chain, and the one the monks mispronounced. All 3, each one a breath of truth in the throat of mistake. The wind combs the alley and lifts the scent of roasted nutmeg from an unseen pot, just faintly. Someone's cooking again. Someone somewhere, boiling something to share. The town isn't healed, but its hands remember how to be used. There's a saying in archives buried past the monasteries, in medical huts where record keepers slept in chairs. Some who die by error walk softer forever after. You don't know if that's about you, but your steps do feel lighter. You pass a low fence where someone has hung cloths shaped like wings. Not real wings, circle-stitched linen made to resemble feathers. Mourning banners from another plague, perhaps, or from a seamstress who had more time than grief. The seamstress is asleep inside. You know that because her window's still open and the candle by her bed is curled at the edges with time, burned just enough to calm the living, not shine for ghosts. You step down the next road, lower than the others, where the stone turns to dirt and the shops dissolve into dwellings. The door ahead is crooked, but the porch is clean. You didn't know your feet would stop here, but they do. A home. Not yours, but not yours. The brass bell above the door has no clapper. It's there only for memory. You touch the knob. Wood, not iron. Nothing reacts. You ease the door open. And inside, warmth. The sort that feels like fire lived here recently, and rest has never entirely left. A shawl hangs by the door. One empty pair of traveling boots beneath the bench. There's steam rising from a kettle, faintly. The kind forgotten, but not burnt. One bed, one chair, and on the table, a cloth doll. Not yours, but made like it. A sister, maybe. A lineage of protection stitched quietly in the flickering hours. You step in. You sit. You leave the door open, because you know now that closing things promises permanence. And you've had enough of that. The kettle begins to hum again. And you, forgotten, named, walked, remembered. You've returned to a place without instruction. And for the first time, no one is watching. The candle by the windowsill flickers low now, barely taller than your thumb. Its wax has pooled into a quiet golden circle, soft, warm, sleepy. The mist outside has thickened once more. It doesn't press you this time. It's gentle now. A nightcoat, loosely drawn. You breathe out through your nose, and the air fogs in front of your lip like a sleep spirit slinking out. You pull the shawl from the wall and curl into it. It still holds the comfort of sunlight that passed through it hours ago. It smells faintly of lavender, earth, and rest. You draw it over your chest, and it settles. Someone might pass outside, but they'd only see the glow of the candle behind pale glass, unmoving. No footsteps follow. No bell rings. Nothing hunts you now. Within you, the name is no longer crumpled or corrected. It sits whole and known behind your ribs. You roll onto your side and listen to the slow hiss of the kettle simmering down. No whistle, just warmth. Some warmth sounds like silence. Your eyelids grow heavier. The wood beneath your head is smooth, worn down by many who've waited, many who've slept. Your breath hushes against the edge of the blanket. Through the window, the fog tucks into the field. The church, the trench, the ossuary, the scented rooms, they all fade into quiet. Their presence remains, but their pressure has lifted. For now, they wait, patient in the dusk. Your thumb brushes the edge of the doll inside your satchel, and as your hand falls still, something inside you tells you, you won't wake up in a coffin again. You're home. If this tale kept you company tonight, let me know where you drifted off. Have a good night.